God's story, kingdom parables. So part of God's story is about how Jesus explained God's kingdom, and it goes like this. Jesus taught people about lots of things, like how to love others, how to pray, and how to follow God. One of the things he talked about a lot was God's kingdom. To help people understand God's kingdom, Jesus told parables. A parable is a story that teaches people something important and helps us know God better. One of Jesus' parables was about a mustard seed. Jesus said the kingdom was like a tiny mustard seed that was planted in the ground and then grew and grew and grew until it became one of the biggest trees in the garden. Jesus was saying that like the mustard seed, God's kingdom might seem small at first, but it never stops growing. The kingdom of God started with just a few people. But every time someone decides to follow God and share Jesus with others, it grows. Jesus also told a parable about a man who planted seeds in the ground. The man went to sleep and the seed started to grow. Over time, it sprouted, then it got taller, and finally it was ready to be harvested. Jesus was saying that like the man who planted the seed, we have a part to play in God's kingdom. But just like the man couldn't make the seed grow, there's a lot in God's kingdom that only God can do. Another parable was about yeast. Yeast is tiny, the size of a grain of sand, but it's really powerful. As it spreads, the yeast makes the dough grow bigger and bigger. It also makes the bread delicious and soft. That means we may not always see what God is doing, but He is always moving. When someone chooses to follow Jesus, God is moving. When someone chooses to forgive someone just like God forgives us, God is moving. When God's people pray, worship, and serve together, God is moving. God's kingdom is growing. We all have a part to play in God's kingdom. And God's kingdom is always working. And that's a little bit about the parables Jesus told about God's kingdom. So in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Jesus told parables to teach us about God's kingdom. A tiny mustard seed grew into a huge tree. A man planted seeds and then had a big harvest. Yeast is small but helps bread grow. All these parables help us remember God's kingdom. And that's a part of God's story.